All right, good morning, everybody. Sorry for the delay in method test prep time today, just some technical issues, but it looks like we've got them all resolved now, so I do appreciate your patience. Again, my name is Kevin Dennis. I am the Director of Long-Arm Classes with Method Test Prep. Again, our test prep time, we kind of go over some essential strategies for students. The one that I'm going to talk about today is going to be conjunctions and prepositions, so two specific parts of speech that many students have a big issue with. One thing that we like to talk about here at the Test Prep, besides plugging our programs, is also, the method to test prep is it's one thing to explain to students after a problem has they've gotten a question wrong and say, hey, okay, this is where you made your mistake. But obviously that isn't as helpful as being able to make sure that students know what to look for. And that's kind of like the method behind the method test prep, is what students can look for in order to get the question right beforehand instead of just understanding what happens afterwards. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, specifically when it comes to the writing and language section for the SAT, the English section for the ACT, or even just general English coursework. Again, we do want to talk about how we are available for SAT prep, ACT prep, and all subjects as well. If you are interested in online tutoring in our days of Corona, you just go to the website, www.methodtestprep.com/online-tutoring. Again, you can just go in there and we can help you out, set you up with, again, tutoring in pretty much anything that you're looking for. So again, we're going to talk about conjunctions and prepositions. So again, it's always important to start with definitions. So as far as the definitions are concerned, so what are conjunctions? Now, a lot of you may only remember conjunctions from those Schoolhouse Rocks. Those were around when I was a kid. So that's going to definitely date myself, something I used to look forward to on Saturday mornings. You guys remember the guy, the engineer, conjunction, junction, what's your function? But there is actually a very important function with conjunctions, as it turns out, not just an awesome, catchy song. What they do is they are basically linking words. They're going to link one word to another, okay? So, or one phrase to another. It's going to, and again, what it does is it kind of just sets up the parallel structure between those words, those clauses, those phrases, whatever you're going to have. Okay. Then we also have prepositions. What prepositions do is they effectively indicate location. They're always going to be paired with a noun or a pronoun. And also, here's some examples. We see about, around, at, by, for, from, a whole bunch of other ones. These are these little words that we use constantly, little words that we use all the time. But a lot of times we don't really fully understand how they're going to be used. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about. They're actually never necessary for a sentence. We've talked about previous lessons as far as what you do need for a sentence in English. You need a subject and a predicate, a noun or a pronoun, and a verb. So you don't necessarily need conjunctions. You don't necessarily need prepositions. Conjunctions will be very important with these questions for the simple reason because, again, they're setting up the parallel structure. You need to know that they're what is matching up both before and after are conjunctions. When it comes to prepositions, very rarely on these exams are they ever necessary, and really they're only there to confuse you. So again, that's one thing we talk about is that they can often be eliminated. So I'm going to go over a couple of examples with conjunctions and a couple of examples of prepositions, and again, what students can look for, okay, with these questions. How to approach these and how to get them right the first time, okay, as opposed to just understanding what happens afterwards. So here's our first example with the conjunctions. So that's when you have these questions. And one thing to be very mindful is what every sentence for these, every question on these exams, you really always need to read the full sentence. A lot of times students are just going to focus on just the underlined word or maybe just a little before or after, okay? But in this case, we will see the word here. And if we actually look for our conjunctions and, but, or, some students may know fanboys, that may sound familiar. Here we have our conjunction and that is going to be the key to solving this question. So this is what we need to be looking for. So what do we see here? We see that word and then we see that word catalog that's underlined. Well, that means we need to match it up. We have to set up the parallel structure. We have to make sure everything is consistent with everything both before and after the conjunction. So in this case, I see that word catalog, but what are the other words we have there? Well, if I notice I have compiling, and then after I have updating. So because I have compiling, I have updating, and then I have my conjunction and I need to match that up with cataloging. So that's why here in this correct answer would be the fourth answer choice, cataloging. So I have compiling, cataloging, and updating. Okay, so that's our first example. Relatively straightforward question. Again, just so you see the consistency, which is also just a general good rule of thumb when it comes to the English section on the ACT, the writing and language section on the SAT, is to just very much just to stay consistent. Let's take a look at our second example. So here we have a couch, for example, 7 inches long, and that is based on a 7-foot long couch. Okay, so again, we want to be looking for any kind of conjunction because again, we want to be looking for our parallel structure. So let's take a look at our next. So we notice we have that word and. So again, what comes before the and must match what comes after the and. And again, I'm not just focusing on what's underlined, okay, and just looking at these intros, which wouldn't necessarily just sounds the best. What I need is to, again, what matches up before has to match what comes after. So what comes before the and? Well, I'm going to get rid of the for example because that's just there to confuse me. And then what do I see before? I see before the couch is 7 inches long. Okay. So in this case, what does that indicate? The couch is 7 inches long. Well, I have an item, I have a verb, and then I have a dimension. So because I have the couch is 7 inches long before, I need to match something up with the couch, something up with the verb, something up with that dimension. So again, let's take a look at these answer choices. Which one matches up as an item, a verb, and a dimension? Well, that's going to be the second answer choice here. A teacup is my item, is my verb, and about 1/4 of an inch is going to be my dimension. Okay, so couch matches up with teacup, is matches up with is, and 7 inches long matches up with about 1/4 of an inch. Okay, hopefully you're starting to get them because they are going to get a little bit trickier. And again, if you are watching, if you want to pause as you go along, if you're watching this later, after it's live, pause so you can kind of take a look at these questions and see what you can figure out on your own. Here we have a nice crazy long sentence here. Okay, you're going to get some crazy long sentences. And again, you need to approach the whole sentence. So again, let's take a look and see what we're looking for. Let's see what kind of conjunctions are out there. So a long sentence, but what's really interesting here is that we want to just focus on the couple of conjunctions that we have here. So we have but, and we have the word or. What's interesting here is we have a couple of parallel structures going on. We're really just going to focus on the latter half of the sentence because that part is underlined, so that's what we need to be focusing on with the question, even though, again, it's extremely important to make sure that we read the whole sentence. So if we want to look about halfway down where it says during this period, it then says some in designated cultural locations. So what we have there is a prepositional phrase, which we're going to be talking about a little bit more in a little bit. So we have in designated cultural locations before the but, and then that also has to match up what comes after. And then we see many more in abandoned lots, on unused buildings, or painted on infrastructure such as highways and bridges. So again, we have a couple of conjunctions and everything's got to match up both before and after. So let's kind of just focus on, again, where we see our underlying portion because that's how we're going to answer our question. So here we see in abandoned lots. So that's preposition and then what we call the object of the preposition, the noun or the pronoun that comes after. So then we go then a little bit further down, then we see on unused buildings. So again, same thing, a preposition and then an object of a preposition. So I need to match that up. So what comes before and after, and then trying to maintain my consistency is with the preposition and then the object of the preposition. Okay, so again, the preposition and the object of the preposition. Okay, so which of these answer choices is going to match up there? Well, we have that word painted, and unfortunately that word painted is going to throw things off a little bit. It's got to be a perfect parallel structure. Preposition, object, preposition, object, preposition, object. So the only one that matches that, okay, is the one that's on infrastructure. So I need to get rid of that word painted so I have those prepositional phrases that match up. Okay, so that's why in this case, just the word on is going to be the correct answer choice by eliminating that word painted. But we're going to have one more conjunctions example, and then we're going to switch into the prepositions, which is another one that students have a hard time with. And this looks like a relatively straightforward sentence, but it's kind of tricky. Okay, so again, let me look for my conjunctions. And, but, or are going to be the main ones. So again, I see that word and. So let me kind of focus on that. So what I need to do is focus what comes before and what comes after. So let's take a look in the beginning. So in the beginning, we see with a small sink and counter along one wall. So I have the items, I have my preposition, and then I have the word wall. Then a little bit later, I have a cast iron wood stove and some hanging pots and pans. A lot of words to confuse you, but it's still just the items, the preposition, and then the wall. Okay, So again, so I have items, preposition wall, items, preposition wall. Well, guess what? I need the same thing again. Items, preposition wall. So in this case, the way it was written was actually correct. So again, it was a small table, my item, under my preposition, a window of the third wall. That would be, again, the description of the wall in this case. Okay, so that's a couple of quick examples of conjunctions. Again, and, but, and, or are going to be the main ones, though. If you know the acronym fanboys, many students know that. Those will be the conjunctions that can help you to set up that parallel structure. Now let's take a quick look at prepositions, another one that students have a hard time with. Now again, these little words that students use all the time, don't really fully understand how they're working, but again, they're really only there to confuse you, okay? And we can eliminate prepositions and again, prepositional phrases. It's going to make it a lot better, a lot easier for us to approach these questions. So again, I want to be able to recognize prepositions. So let's go through this sentence and take a look at what prepositions we have here. And we have a few of them, okay? Well, first off, I want to get rid of that phrase beforehand because again, that's just there to, again, to confuse you. So the prepositions that we have, in this case, we have of, we have within, and we have on. Now again, these create prepositional phrases. If we notice, we have that word of, residue, falling, the falling describes the residue, within such limits, and then on human health. Again, you have the noun or the pronoun that's always going to follow that preposition. Sometimes it'll be other adjectives or other words in there, but again, the necessary element of the prepositional phrase is going to be the noun, is the preposition followed by a noun or a pronoun. So again, they're just there to confuse us. So let's just get rid of them. We don't need them. And it's going to make this sentence a lot easier to understand. So by getting rid of those prepositional phrases, what do I have left? I have the minute amounts have no negative impact. Okay, this is a much easier way to approach the sentence just by getting rid of a lot of stuff that's just there to confuse me. So by focusing on what I have left, I see that amounts is going to be my subject, have is going to be my verb. Those match up. I have a plural subject with a plural verb. So that's going to be my correct answer because again, the plural subject does require the plural verb. So this is actually correct as is. There is no change. And that's one of the main ways that they are going to throw you off with the prepositional phrases is trying to throw you off with subject-verb agreement. Okay, and that's the next two examples are going to do the same thing. They're going to try and throw us off with subject-verb agreement. So let's look at our next sentence. Okay, so again, the only word that's underlined is the word requires. But again, I need to read the full sentence to focus on what's going on. So we see the word requires, and they give us different forms of the verb. So I need to match that up again with my subject. And if you look, and this is what happens to a lot of students, they look at these two words next to each other. They see the noun varieties next to the word requires, and they'll go varieties requires. And that sounds awful. So they're automatically going to just eliminate that as an answer choice and try and torture one of the other ones to try and make it work. But again, varieties may not necessarily be the subject because guess what? As you're probably picking up on this, we have our prepositions that are there to confuse you and to lead you to the wrong answer choice. So it's not going to be varieties requires. That's the thing that we need to be looking for. What we need to be focusing on is that preposition, in this case, that word into. Okay, so again, that creates our prepositional phrase. In this case, that's into regional English varieties. And because it's a prepositional phrase, again, I can eliminate it as if it's not even there. So what do I have left? Okay, lost the slide somewhere along the way. So into regional variety, I can get rid of that. So if I notice, it's not varieties requires, it's research requires. Okay, research is a singular subject. Any abstract or intangible noun is always going to be a singular subject. Okay, so it's going to match up with a singular verb. So research requires is actually correct. Okay, so again, this would be no change. So again, they're trying to make you think that it's variety requires would be correct or varieties require, but it's really, again, the subject in this case is research and it's the research requires. I'm going to see the same thing with our next example. So in this case, again, let's take a look at the prepositions. Which ones can we get rid of? So let's go through the sentence. And again, like before, it says they're trying to make us think, phosphates was. Sounds weird, but again, it's the prepositions that we need to focus on. In this case, we have of and we have with. So again, we're going to eliminate those. So I can eliminate of the lake and I can eliminate with blue-green algae. I can focus on what's just left. I'm going to focus after the word when because this is the clause that we're looking at this point. So now I have the half containing the phosphates was teeming. So my subject in this case would be half, and my verb is going to be was. So half was teeming. I've also eliminated containing the phosphates because that's actually describing the half. So I can now just focus on the subject and just focus on the verb. So because half, again, another intangible noun, abstract noun, has to be singular, so that matches with was. So I know I can get rid of any answer choice that has a plural verb. And the way I'm actually going to get this correct answer, again, I had said before, always want to stay consistent. So earlier in the sentence, we see the word confirmed. So we're going to kind of match it up with the word was. If I use the word teams, that is singular, but it is present tense. And we need to match up with the word confirmed, again, to stay consistent. Now, this next one's a lot of fun. My definition of the word fun might be different from your definition of the word fun, but nonetheless, it's a very long sentence here. But again, a lot of these words are here just to confuse you. So let's take a look at this. Let's take a look and see where we can get rid of some prepositions. And guess what? We can get rid of a lot. So I'm going to turn the slide and let's see how many prepositions we have here. Quite a few. And again, all of this is here to confuse you. So everything all these prepositional phrases, we can get rid of. So I'm going to go ahead and cross that off. And look at how much we can cross off from this ridiculously long sentence. And if you look carefully, if you start with the word from in the very beginning of the sentence, all the way up to Gothic, again, the American Gothic being the object of the last preposition, there is literally nothing before that period. One of the basic things that we learn, we go back to kindergarten, where it's one of the first things we learn about periods, is they end a sentence. Periods do not start a sentence. Okay? So as we can see, all that we have left, okay, is a period, and then these works have favored representations. Much, much easier to work with. Again, we don't start sentences with periods or semicolons, okay? So everything else we can get rid of, okay? So we see a semicolon, we see the period in the first three answer choices. All of those have got to be incorrect. So everything there, again, we can kind of pull out of the sentence, okay? So that's why the comma is going to be the correct answer. So a ridiculous looking sentence that by getting rid of prepositional phrases, you can get it right and get it right quick, which helps you get to some other harder questions. We've got one final example, and guess what? That's going to bring in both conjunctions and prepositions. So let's take a look at this. Let's see what conjunctions we're going to have that are going to match up, so we can have our parallel structure, and which prepositions we can find so we can, again, eliminate our prepositional phrases. So we see the word and, that's our conjunction. So again, now we know, and again, what we want to look for ahead of time, not just understanding afterwards, but how to get the correct question correct right away, is again, identifying our parallel structure because of that conjunction and. Now we also know that we have our prepositions. So let's go through because let's see which ones we can eliminate. And by eliminating these prepositional phrases, again, so we can make this sentence a lot simpler. So now I know I'm going to be eliminating some prepositional phrases and also looking for parallel structure. So let's focus on what's left. I'm going to get rid of those prepositional phrases and focus on my parallel structure. And what I have left now is children were entertained and is captivated. So right there should be a flag because were is plural, is singular. Also, we have different tenses going on. So that's a bit of a problem. Again, stay consistent. So we know that's going to be a problem because, again, that does not match up. Even if I just focus on just the word entertained, it's going to be word were entertained and then were is captivated. Obviously, that also sounds pretty wacky. Okay, so we know that entertained is not going to match up with is captivated. If, as an answer choice, it said were entertained and then said and were captivated, that would be okay. That would match up. Unfortunately, that's not one of the answer choices. So you always have to go with what they give you. So in this case, just by getting rid of the were, getting rid of the is, okay, then I have entertained is going to match up with captivated. Okay, so that then gives me both the parallel structure that I'm looking for, and then also then, again, the tense is going to be perfect. And just so you know, that word were is going to be assumed for both entertained and captivated. And that, again, that is kind of throws things off. Okay? So that's our quick lesson for today. Again, sorry for the delay, a little bit of technical issues, but I'm glad we got those resolved. So I did just want to focus. We do have our Test Prep Time Plus. just, all good things must come to an end. So the one that was today was the last free one. They are still on our Facebook page, so feel free to review them at any time. Hopefully you have found them enjoyable. But today was the last free one. We are going to be continuing to do both our Test Prep Time Plus and our also Test Prep Time, but they will now require enrollment. So our last one that's today for $10 will be at 1 o'clock today. It's going to be on conflicting viewpoints with science, specifically for the ACT, one that a lot of students have a hard time with. It's very time consuming. So again, a lot of times when we look at these questions, the idea is to try and see, how you can approach these questions from the get-go, not just understanding afterwards, but understanding how to approach. So our last one for the test prep time at for 10 hours will be today at 1 o'clock. Again, we no longer have the free ones at 11. From here on in, our test prep time again will be 1 o'clock. The one that we have on Monday is going to be doing literal equations for math. If you are interested, we are going to be doing a monthly pass, so you get a bit of a discount by enrolling for the entire month for all of these. So again, they start at 1 p.m. We have the test prep time plus for $10, and the monthly pass is going to be $160. Our test prep time plus is going to be at 8 p.m. Okay, so there's going to be a little bit more in depth. The one we'll be doing at 8 o'clock is plugging numbers, an excellent strategy for a lot of the math questions for both the SAT and ACT, and again, it's applicable to school as well. Those are, again, more in depth, so they're going to cost $20, but again, we still have the monthly pass for those, which will cost $280, so you would save $40 instead of buying them all individually. I did want to plug last time the Advantage class for the ACT, which at this point is still running on June 13th. So we have the Sunday class that starts this Sunday, May 3rd. It's going to run 1 to 4 p.m. It's going to be 6 3-hour classes running from May 3rd to June 7th. We're also going to have a weekday class that's going to start on Wednesday, May 13th. It's going to run Mondays and Wednesdays, 8 to 10. It's going to be 9 2-hour classes. As usual, I do want to mention our self-paced program, which many people are taking advantage of. Again, currently, not indefinitely, but currently we have the discount of future. So again, we love to say 15 minutes a day and students can improve their score. So now would be a perfect time to start prepping for the fall exams. It's a checklist, so students can hit the checklist week by week. And if they start now, they'll be very, very well prepared for the fall exams. And then finally, obviously we've got a changing world right now, and a good way to stay on top of everything that's changing is to subscribe to our blog. So you can go to, obviously, methodtestprep.com. You go to the blog at info.methodtestprep.com/blog to stay informed. Certainly always go to our Facebook, our Instagram, or LinkedIn, or our Twitter page as well. Anyway, I hope you found this informative, and we hope you have a wonderful weekend.